the theme for this International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. And so I'll take you back to the beginnings of your career. Hope, to what extent do you feel that you were able to challenge things you were not happy about, challenge yourself? What changed as you went along?
Really, like I told you earlier, Doc, is I may be one of the luckier people because I was challenged. I was thrown in a place that I had no choice but to swim, right? So I sort of was born in a life of challenge, right? So I was born a refugee in Uganda and really had to fight to get to the top. But more than that, the first thing that really challenged my life, of course I had something to do about it because I made a choice, was to join the liberation war of Rwanda. Many people don't know, like I found out that you didn't know, that the women's position in Rwanda today is not just the factor of the genocide. Mm-hmm. The biggest factor around it is that women showed up and fought in the war. Yeah, so that is something that challenged me, and since then I don't think I've looked back. And one of the things that I discuss with my colleagues is that no is not an option. Defeat is not an option. So get over it, get under it, get besides it. There has to be a way. So yeah, so I think that was an important thing in my life.
Can I just check that everybody in this room knows that Rwanda has exceeded gender targets on all fronts? Yes. Okay. Great. Thank you. And you heard when she said that she fought in a war. Right. Okay. Great.
You heard that, so be careful.
Yes. Racy?
I grew up in the rural part of Western Kenya, and as a village girl, experiencing the village life, that was my reality at that point in time. And I guess it's a case where you're looking at planes and you're thinking one day I'll be able to fly in this plane. But also having a mother who believed in us, who had a lot of faith in us, having a dad who was ready to support us, no matter which gender you are, because we are many girls and less boys. And in my culture, it was always a case of you need, if a woman has given birth to girls first, then there's a lot of those whispers, you need to get another wife so that you can get a boy. And that's something that I saw my mom challenging, and it's something I grew up knowing that I always have to challenge the stereotypes that people have within the society. And that's something that has been pushing me throughout. I bring in my best, definitely, in everything that I do, but where I need to raise my hand, I raise my hand. I don't keep quiet. If there's an opportunity, then I'll always raise my hand and say I'm available. And it's something that I always tell the women around me, let's raise our hands.
Yeah. Racy, look back at the start of your career and where you are now as a CEO. Were you always able to challenge?
Initially, no. I would say no, and it's because of my upbringing to start with, because where women were supposed to be meek, men tell you stuff and you follow, and you're aware we come from the same side, where sometimes when a man roars, you need to kneel down and just listen. But having said that, initially when I got to work, I remember one of the times we had this white guy who had come in from out, and they came to a meeting and they were putting me down. Throughout, they put me down very badly at that point in time, and I kept quiet. I never said anything. Later on, I happened to get a female boss who told me, when such things happen, please, can you push back? You're a human being. They should treat you as a human being. From that time, just having that woman who lifted me up and told me you need to stand your ground. When people treat you wrong, you need to speak about it. So that has helped, and it's given me more of a voice. Yeah.
Nancy, what about your experience?
Well, my experience is a little different because I grew up with a very strong woman leader. My mother was a strong person, and she was a leader even by the time I was getting born, you know. So I was accustomed to leadership very early. But then what changed is the fact that sometimes, because maybe the stars seem to align, you just sit back because you think you're really good at what you do and you wait to be found. And then sometimes I discovered that it always doesn't work, and people will run you down, and you won't even have an opportunity to even express yourself. I worked in a male-dominated field very early from the age of 19 in the ICT world. When Windows was being launched, we were amongst the people that launched Windows in East Africa. Microsoft Windows, for those of you that don't know what Windows is. And there were only male, pretty much. There were a few people like Tonya Karaoke, ex-Microsoft, very few women. And I realized these men were boisterous, they would run you over, they were very fast. And I learned just how to speak up. Otherwise, I'd just go into a room, not say nothing. I feel I have left like I have done absolutely nothing. And as I grew through in my career, I realized how important it is for you to be articulate and be able to actually bring value and speak at the table of men and women.
How did that learning come to you? What was the process of, finding your voice, speaking out, standing up for yourself?
Well, I have to say I got help. I had help from my first really significant managing director of Highway Africa then. Highway Africa was the leading broadband satellite provider in Africa at that point in time. And Salim Suleiman took me on as his apprentice very early. And he helped me speak, and actually would even send me to as far as the United Kingdom to represent the company in board meetings. I'm only 26 years old. So I think sometimes you need people to carry you along and bring you along. Then I went into Safaricom, and in Safaricom, I think that's when my star really began to shine. And I would give credit to Sylvia Mulinge and to Bob Colimo, because they drew me out and give me a platform. So sometimes, and I think you might have listened to people who say, you need people to find you, and you need people to help speak and sponsor your story at the table of leadership. And I can say that's what happened.
So Nancy, you've talked to us about the importance of finding workplaces that are good for you, that have cultures that allow you to thrive, that are inclusive. Hope, how did you choose workplaces that were good for you and for your career? Was it deliberate? Did you know what you were doing when you first started out? How did that awareness come to you?
So it really the first job more or less wasn't a job I chose. I was told, this day you're going to, at 26, you're going to be a managing director of the national insurance company. So I tried to figure out how to survive, like I told you that. And one of the things I learned earlier on is that you actually have to change your workplace, because you always not be able to find the exact place that you want. And that was very true for my second job, Zepri, where I joined. When I came in, it was the most old-fashioned, old men with suits. You couldn't go into the deputy managing director's office or the managing without a suit or a tie or something. And I said, something has to change here or I have to leave. And the last 18 years, essentially what I've tried to do. And you can actually do something. So we need to stop just being victims and try to change things. Speak out against the bullies. Definitely you have to do that. And I see a young female population here. Do speak out against the bullies. Respectfully. You don't have to raise your voice, top of everybody. But don't let that pass by you. And I hope it's something that I'm able to communicate to the women in my organization, that you speak out about that. So try to create your own 3 feet of influence change, like Sunny would say.
Racy, for you, what was it look like? What did it look like for you to choose workplaces that were good for you, given that you're coming from this background where you're supposed to be meek and mild?
One of the things I believe in, there's a lot of strength in still being soft. And a lot of times, especially when a male-dominated workforce rate you, they would always say probably a lady soft. But in a lot of times when you look at that, there's the strength in softness, in that soft leadership style, is that you bring people with you. And without people, as leaders, we're nothing. That's one thing I always believe in. But also, having said that, culture starts with the leader. Culture is not someone else. The culture starts with the leader. It's the leader to make sure then they're showing, they're acting, they're walking the talk throughout to make sure then the others can follow. So it's more leading the way and others following you. Have I always known then I'm going to this company because of, I would say probably it's just the last company, Novartis, where I am right now, where I can say the culture is in line with my values and my purpose, because we are very clear on a culture which is inspired, curious, and unbossed, but also being very self-aware as a leader, as a person, that there's an impact of your words, your actions to those around you. And if you're a leader, then it means then your words, your actions have to be in line. You cannot be saying something totally different, doing something totally different. And boss means empowering your team to take accountability and responsibility of their actions and their decisions, but still being there as an enabler to make sure then you remove barriers for them to excel where they are.
So the theme for this Activate Women's Leadership Conference, Women Leadership in Africa, is enlighten, elevate, and evolve. And you've all spoken about the people who opened doors for you, helped you find your voice, spoke up for you. How do you do that for other women, Nancy?
So I think you have to be very deliberate and intentional and be very clear about how you're going to elevate women. First, find them. So I have my head of HR in the room, and she will tell you, Mary, that we've gone to lengths to find women. There are lots of them. Women do not apply for jobs ordinarily. They're too busy with themselves, too busy maybe even with events like this. They're not busy trying to look which is the next job coming up. And sometimes we're identified. So one of the things that we have said, even if we advertise and we don't have female candidates, we have to go and find them and bring them into the pool. That's the first thing, find the women. And then two, the women that I have in my team, and I'm happy to say, I think we're almost getting to I think 50% of our 50% women in the senior leadership team that report into managing director. But it's not just finding the women, it's also developing and equipping them with skills. So I've had the advantage of working for various brands and for very many years, for over 25 years now. And some of the things that I say is that the younger girls may not have had the same advantage. And if I have to wait for them to get the 25 years, it's also unfair, right? So I spend a lot of time training, teaching, literally, and sharing the experience that I have had in my years. This afternoon, for instance, we're working on our DSTV business strategy. And I recall I spent at least 40 minutes just sharing the process of commercial strategy as we did it in other places to upskill and uplift and support the women. And I also know that women get run down in meetings. I've experienced it firsthand. So it's also being there to ensure that you understand what your team or what your female colleague is going to talk about. You understand every little detail and every possible corner that someone is going to approach you from, and then support them and elevate them literally. So find them, coach them, and even train as much as you can. And it takes a lot of time as a CEO. I can tell you that as a fact. But you've got to do it. Right. Yeah.
Thank you. Hope, what's your perspective? Because you were talking earlier about challenging bullies. And I think for several women here, you would say that. You fought in a war. Okay. So standing up to bullies is not a thing for you. But think about Racy 30, 40 years ago in the village, in her first job, being bullied. How would you support her? How do you elevate and make sure that she's claiming her space?
That is very, very true. But on the other hand, we are also it's a very lucky generation. You have great role models. I mean, just think about, we're talking about what is happening this year. The AU Vice Chair, WTO, American Vice President, come on. I mean, the ceiling doesn't exist. We've shattered it. And we just shouldn't allow people to break it, it's this kind of thing, if you don't keep working on it, they're building it very quickly, right? So get out and look out for those role models. Be encouraged. And one of the things that was talked about earlier also was the kind of people that you look to support you, because you will not do it alone, I guarantee you. Even the people that you see today that are in those high places have had men and women support them. So find the people that support you. I remember.
Identify them.
How do you identify them? So some of the things are quite easy, right? Others are quite difficult. I've had cases, for example, where somebody like Condoleezza Rice says, if I had looked out for a black woman mentor, none had ever been Secretary of State, right? So I looked out for old, male, white. They are the ones that helped her climb. And there's something that you need to do also around being strategic. That you do not, if you're looking for something, it's not about head on. It's not about shouting against each other. We've seen that. We are the Davids and the Goliaths, isn't it? So you don't go in the armor and the bulletproof and whatever, because that guy is bigger and stronger and will crush you. So we need to be tactical and strategic. And one of the women that I admire, because I'm in the industry, is a lady called Inga Bell. She's a damn Inga Bell now. She was the first woman CEO, bisexual, of Lloyd's. Lloyd's of London was the first insurance group in the world, over 500 years old, 350 years old. And the way she went in, she told us this in a room like this, and we're all looking at her because in the insurance industry and she stepped down after 5 years, a few years ago. She said, look here, so we were a number of women in different institutions. So Lloyd's has a way that it works in syndicates. So she was heading one of the syndicates. And the women said, the new CEO role is coming up, and you know what? There's even not going to be any woman on the short list. Don't you think anyone can do it? Then she walked to the chairman and said, the women think we are not represented, and I think you should consider us.
Yeah.
And the guy is looking at her and like, who is this one? Then she makes her rounds. She gets her PA to pick all the men she knows will make an impact in that will vote. She had decided, without telling them what she's up to, she asked each one of them for tea. Can we have a drink next week? Can we have tea on Tuesday? They didn't know, and they said, oh, this is a woman that has looked out for me, I need your support, I need you to mentor me. And by the time the voting happened, everybody knew who Inga Bell was. Like, yeah, she's great, I've known her, she's a great woman. People who didn't even meet her, hadn't met her. So we need to be strategic, right?
Yeah.
Don't go head on. Yeah. So whether it's about getting mentorship, whether it's getting your point hard, whether it's finding people to help you along, whether it's getting you show up, shout out, but do it in a way that does not make guys that are already insecure more insecure.
Maybe I can add
Our lives are very difficult because we're having to manage other people's insecurity, but thank you. Racy, yes.
Just to add on that, I believe as women we need to tell our stories more. Because we don't say that. We listen more to other people's stories. When we have such powerful stories that we can tell, we need to tell that more. One of the things I've learned in my career, because I've had a very good support system, and some of them have been male, and they've really pushed me as my sponsors to reach where I am to start with, and some of them have also been women. One thing I've learned is, just like your career, you need to have a board of directors for your life. That's something that's very critical. You're the CEO of your career. You're the CEO of your life. You need to have someone who is accountable, who is your accountability partner, someone who will challenge you, someone who will mentor you, someone who will coach you. You need to have that kind of board that even when you sit, and this is an external board, but internally also you need to have your own board of directors internally. That when you feel I need to be accountable now, be accountable. When you feel you need to raise your hand, raise your hand. Don't be keeping quiet. Be your own CEO of your life and your career. Yeah.
So we've talked about the people who've supported you, how you've gotten this far. I'd like to share an example, an anecdote that shocked me when I heard it about 2 months ago. And I was speaking to another woman. For those of you who don't know, I've also become a coach. And I was speaking to another woman who told me that she'd been up for promotion in one of our fairly prestigious international organizations. And that organization has diversity targets, which cover women as well. And so she was up for promotion to, I think, a prestigious role where there was only one woman, at the table. And when she approached that woman for help, the other woman said, I like you, and I think you can do this, but I actually don't want you to be here because I enjoy being the only woman at this table. And as you can see, my head is still broken from that conversation. And so my question to you ladies is, how do you deal with women? And unfortunately, some of us behave like that without recognizing that we are the obstacles to the journeys of other women. And so given that you're all actively engaged in elevating women, helping ensure that, women rise, as far as they can go, what do you say to someone like that? Who blocks, another person's light, who wants to be the only queen bee, in powerful spaces? Racy.
It's true, sometimes as women, we can be obstacles to others rising to where they need to rise. And what I would say from my experience, we need to be intentional about what we need to do for women to start with. For the companies we work for, and I'll give an example, like for Novartis, what we've done is we've made an epic commitment that we are going to have a 50% representation of women in all leadership positions across the organization. But also another thing, what we do, and the HR people are also here, what we do is whenever we are holding an interview, as much as we talk about women being represented as the interviewees, we need the panel also to be 50% representation of women. Because you can be saying that you're bringing in women giving them opportunity, but the people who are interviewing have these stereotypes.
But women themselves can hold those
Yes, they can. It's a lot more education, and seeing from that has been my experience, a lot more education, being very intentional about the women agenda within our workplaces, being able to demonstrate that as leaders. And for the ones who are that way, that it's something that we just need to self-reflect and once in a while to ask ourselves, which woman have I held today? And probably that's what we should be doing every day. Which women have I, even as we're seated here, maybe let's just think through and see, which woman have you held today? Which woman have you held last month to reach where they are? I think some of those things are very intentional. We just have to do them intentionally.
Yeah. Nancy?
Okay, so let me first start with, you asked what would I say to her? I'd say, first, it's wrong, and you're selfish. You need to stop it. And you wouldn't go far. It's just a matter of time. That's the first thing.
She didn't, because I know who it was.
Yeah. The number two is, I mentioned earlier that I have worked in male-dominated field. And at one point, I was possibly one of two other women. And I recall my experience, and those of you that know my history, I had a short stint in the banking industry. And we're just one of two women in the exco. And my colleague, who has also made managing director now, she came to me and told me, Nancy, have you noticed the guys, whenever one of them has an issue and we are debating, they coalesce amongst themselves and they vote for this guy. And then when there's an issue they don't like about us, everybody is on you and you have no one for you. That day I have noticed that. And she was like, you know why? These guys hang out and drink together, We as women, what do? We go home to take care of our children, or we go home to chat with our other girlfriends or with our mothers, so we don't create those connections, right? And then we realize that we need to empathize and hold each other's back as well. Of course, not being unrealistic and unreasonable, we have to be calculated in how we do it, and we have to have the competency and prepare effectively. But we realize we have to hold each other's back, because the men will run you down and they will have discussed it in the bar, and by the time they come to the table, the decision has already been made. Yeah. And who is the man also? It's the managing director who is a male, and they were drinking together at the club, and you were not there. And they discussed everything long before, because you share the agenda and the decisions long before you go into the meeting. So it is important that you have other women that will hold your back, of course, but also a woman where when I wear lipstick, the men will not say it's too red. So we are two or three of us, believing the femininity of a woman, and they won't say, oh, it's just a woman thing. It actually does help to have more women with you as another woman. It helps you just be a woman. You don't want to be another man in the room, ideally. And you have no reason to want to be that, including, let me just add this woodwork. As I was growing up, we wore a lot of black suits, dark suits and shirts. In fact, my photos, a lot of my young photos, I am wearing sharp black photos with heels and very dark shirts. And I just felt, I'm turning too much of a man. Yeah, this is not right. And then fortunately, I went into Safaricom. And Safaricom, I think Bob came in after Michael. And Bob forced us to dress down. He said, why are you wearing suits? Everybody was wearing a suit. And for the first time, women even started wearing, dressing like women. And the femininity, there's such a good feeling, being allowed to just be a woman and wear my frills, and wear as many things I want to wear. Yeah.
As many things.
Come to the office looking like a flower.
Yes. Right. I don't want to be the sore thumb sticking out, and that strength in numbers of strange things we wear becomes not normal, as Hope said. Normalize it.
Yeah. Thank you. So Hope, the question I had asked is, what do you do with these women who, like being the only women?
So just tell them, take a walk and, manage your life. Find other people that will support you. Don't waste time with those people. And by the way, even today, get away from the negative people. Please run, take a run, right? But going from what Nancy was saying, there's a joke that we copied, sorry, no offense made. We copied trousers from men. They're even called power suits, right? When we have a trousers, whatever, suit. And we even copied their way of leadership, which has ego, guess who's the boss around here, bullshit stuff, right? Yet we know as women...
I apologize for the French. She comes from Rwanda.
Okay, sorry. Yet we know, research after research, even what we saw with Susan, empathy is what will drive innovation, is what will drive competitiveness, is the future. So as we go into these roles, lead like women. Do not become a man. But really going back to what is it that we can do and what do we do for other women? Because honestly, and I go back to that, what within your sphere of influence are you able to do? And I've looked at most of these major corporations. The heads of HR are women. Do you agree? Do they see it as their role to bring in more women? It really, we have to challenge each other. Imagine if that HR knew that I am going to find the best women, because we know the best women most probably don't apply. They are busy, young ones, having children, bringing up a family, trying to stay in the shadows of the man so that he's not threatened. So what about if that HR role, we took it and got our power and got our vote? So wherever we are, it doesn't matter at what level. You really have the influence and you need to wield it. What we've done at ZEPRI, we've attacked this at different levels. I am an unapologetic feminist, so that one is something the guys know. Yeah, the guys in the organization know when we start, it's like, yeah, this is a women's organization, come on, you're guests. So, and so what we've done, we started at the bottom. So we started a young professional program and we completely decided it's going to be girls, young girls. We got involved into mentorship. I'm lucky to be involved with an organization, a global organization called the Global Give Back Circle. I don't know if you know about it. It mentors girls at risk, girls that have gone through schools like Starehe and all that. And the mentorship chapter was also brought to ZEPRI, so that most of the ladies within ZEPRI are part of mentors. They also benefit from mentorship. They've joined a group called Girls for Girls. I don't know if you know that as well. It's a group mentorship, yeah. The team is there at the end, and the people know that. So we've tried to do that at different levels. In addition to saying we have to have 50% across the board, because remember, numbers don't necessarily mean influence, right? So we have to make sure that the women are in influential position. Yeah, so we've gone out to find women. I called myself a few years ago the chief recruitment officer. Every conversation I have is a recruitment opportunity. You know how you talk about it's a coaching opportunity? So that's what I do.
There's a question here. I've also seen the opposite, where someone expects you to promote them just because they're women. What do you do in that case?
I think it's not a fair question, because those will be most probably be men, right? Because one, and I had this experience. I mean, in my own boardroom, one of my experts said, when I said we'll have women, they said, oh, they have to be qualified. I'm like, of course. We even talk about that. Of course, they have to be qualified. Actually, women have gone and become more qualified than men. Every time I see the CVs, it's incredible, right? So there are many good women to promote. Find them.
Which is what Nancy's been doing.
Yeah.
You go out and bring them in.
Find them, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for the top women I have in my organizations, I've hired them on my own. I actually go out and look for them. Some of them it's taken me 3 years. I have to convince them that it's the right role. I have to convince them that it's the right organization. And today I have, the best women.
How many of you feel you've been empowered to face your challenges head on? You won't be shying away. 2 hands up, okay. The entire room, okay, well done. Congratulations. Ladies, it seems to me that your work here is done. And so, ladies, please put your hands together for these extraordinary women. And so hope you'll be pleased to know that I speak French as well. You all are some badass women, okay? So I'd like to thank you all for your time. Nancy Matimu, Hope Morera, Racy Muchilwa, for being so generous with your insights, your experiences, your journey, and for inspiring everyone who's heard you this evening. Thank you so very much. My name is Udwa Kamimo. It's been a pleasure to be your moderator for this Activate CEO panel. Thank you.
Thank you.